Well, time to have a look at the markets picture by starting off with what is happening in Asia. Those particular markets at this point mixed, and this is as a result of Hong Kong firms that are playing in that online Chinese gaming space. Those firms happened to drop in terms of share performance, and this is on the back of the activity being described as opium by Chinese state media. As it stands right now, the Hang Seng Index closing 0.1% lower, the Nikkei down 0.5%. However, as we look at what is happening on the European side of things, markets on that front in positive territory. Investors at this particular point digesting news of the Delta variants, digesting news as well of earnings that have been rolling in from the European side as well. But there's also the Chinese tech regulation that investors are playing a keen interest in. When we look at what's happening when it comes to US futures at this particular point, rebounding after some concern yesterday around global recovery. What is interesting to note, rather, from the US point of view, is the Center for Disease Control saying that they've reached a 70% vaccination milestone. It's important because as we look at pre-trading activity right now in the U.S. futures markets, it's all the shares that stand to benefit from a full economic recovery of the U.S. and, of course, full opening of the U.S. economy. To talk to us about how some of these themes are playing out in the world, in particularly the JSE, as it relates to the Asian performance, we are joined by Makwe Masilela from Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, thank you so much for your time. The JSE opening a little bit lower today, and of course it's the concerns around what is happening in China. What's your assessment of the markets right now?
Good day to you. Definitely it was expected, We've seen the likes of Tencent being down over 11%. And we know that we've got the likes of Naspers and Proxas having a very significant exposure when it comes to that. So it was expected. And the guys being down almost 4%, that is Naspers and Proxas, then it doesn't surprise us to see that the industrials are pulling us down. But fortunately, resources are helping out. And then at least then we have seen that the losses have not just been that bad. Because as we are talking now, I think we are just down almost 0.2, 0.3%. But yes, our international peers, especially in Europe, they're doing okay and they're digesting even the good earnings that are coming out of there. But generally, I think the fact that we've seen that some local governments in the US are saying people have to start wearing masks. People are starting to say, please, encouraging you, even if you are indoors. Companies as big as your Facebook or McDonald's saying they'll make it compulsory for people to start wearing masks at their campuses. That tells you that the spread of the Delta variant is a serious issue and will continue to be on our radar screen. And hopefully, as much as we have seen the U.S. Federal Reserve chairperson downplaying the effects thereof on the economic growth, we hope that it doesn't have that bad dent, because as we are saying, most stocks are getting towards the normalization, that is the full opening of the economies.
Right, so we're going to talk about China in a short bit, but locally we had RB Platt publishing their numbers, managing to quintuple their cash pile as a result of the PGM prices. What did you make of the numbers?
I think that's a very good number, and I think that tells you that we have to start paying much attention when it comes to these junior platinum stocks, because that's starting to do well. Look at their EBITDA, which is basically a measure that we use to evaluate operating performance, up almost 163%. That's very impressive. Headline earnings per share, that's their profits up almost 446. And you said it rightly so, that the guys benefited from a very favorable PGM market condition. And also the guys managed to benefit from high production and sales volume. And not forgetting that a very strong rand-dollar exchange rate also worked to their benefit. So yeah, stock price unfortunately is down over 5% at the back of that, but I think it's on a day where people are taking profits.
Let's talk about, the trading picture in Asia. I mean, what are some of the things that are concerning you about the developments on that side?
It's very confusing, because when you get people who are very close to policymakers in China, they're telling you that, listen, guys, this is not a question that the Chinese government, as we know that it's a communist party, does not mean they're anti-capitalism, but the guys are trying to make things normal. They're trying to level the playing field, especially when we look into the educational stocks as well, saying that prices have been going up in not a nice way. And also, this is coming at the back of, we've seen before the issue about the gaming story or the gaming industry. We know that they were busy with tech firms, the DDs of this world, but now we also start to worry because we also saw some reports that also when it comes to their automobile chip makers, the guys are starting to probe them for price manipulation. So it's very confusing, and maybe people don't have to really buy Chinese companies themselves, but maybe get invested in companies that we fully understand, but have an exposure to the Chinese market, because you cannot afford to ignore that kind of a market.
On that note then, what are you telling your investors to calm them down? How are you dealing with that risk?
That let's continue to pile up in stocks that have got a serious exposure to China, because it's a very big market, and we have seen even when it comes to the luxury goods, those companies get to benefit from the likes of China, the likes of the US, so definitely we cannot ignore that. So it's a play that will continue to be involved by investing in companies that have got exposure, not companies which are Chinese owned. And anyway, those kind of companies, very difficult even to read their financial statements or to understand where they're going, and some of them indirectly or directly, they even get to be owned by the Chinese government itself.
All right, Makwe, thank you so much for your time. Of course, as you mentioned, we will keep abreast on what is happening on that particular front. And it will also be interesting how markets open tomorrow on the Asian side of things, as well as what regulators on the Asian side can do to reassure investors that it may necessarily not be the beginning of the end, especially when it comes to some of the big global fund managers that have exposure to a lot of the companies that are listed in China that play in the online gaming space as well. And we'll also be keeping a close attention as to how the US markets play for the rest of the day. That is it from me. We're going to take a quick break.